Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2653 of The Tom Woods Show. And guess who we have with us? Our old friend Isaac Morehouse, whom we have not heard from for quite some time. And you know, Isaac, the other day I had Jack Spirko on the show, and we were talking about his new book, which covers a great many topics. And one of them had to do with your circle of friends and how important that circle of friends is on the formation of you. And one thing I said to him was that one thing I love about my friends is that even if I fall out of contact with them for a little while, when I get back in contact with them, what's exciting is they're up to something new and interesting and different from what they were the last time I was in contact with them. They don't stagnate. And you are like anti-stagnation, really. I mean, you really, every time I talk to you, you're up to some new world-changing thing. So you're the CEO now of Open Ed, which is all about creating customized education for individual students. And we're going to talk also about your co-authored brand new book, Open Education, How to Reimagine Learning, Ignite Curiosity, and Prepare Your Kids for Success. So Isaac, I am absolutely delighted to have you back.
So good to be back, Tom. It has been a while. And yeah, you're right. Much to my wife's chagrin, I do mix it up quite frequently.
Well, this one, I mean, my gosh, this is the right topic at the right time, because I think people have been stirred up by a number of developments. I mean, we're living in a world where COVID made clear to a lot of people how much nonsense is going on in the schools, and there's an obsession with standardized testing, which led to its own share of problems. But there's also now the internet, the mature version of the internet, and there's AI and all these sorts of things. The tools are out there waiting to be picked up by parents who really want to do something unique for their kids that is customized for them and specific to them. So your own background, I think, feeds into this career path of yours. So let's start there. How did Isaac Morehouse come to be?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a little teaser for where we're going to go with the conversation, that what's happening in education right now, kind of like quietly under a lot of people's noses, it is one of the biggest wins for lovers of liberty anywhere in any area of the country, any area of policy or things that you care about, things that affect your daily life. There is something happening in education that is so massive in the direction of more freedom, more individual choice. That's like kind of this quiet revolution. So I'm gonna use that as a little teaser. We'll get to there. My own background, I grew up homeschooled from Michigan, and in the 80s, my parents decided to homeschool us, and it was borderline illegal at the time. It was like pretty legally dubious. My mom was a certified teacher, so you technically had to be at the time. But we had friends who weren't, and they had like Child Protective Services could come to your door. Like, it was a big deal. My mom would be like, "Don't play out in the yard during the day. Somebody might call." And so like that was how radical it was then. Lots and lots of changes happened really through the 80s and 90s to make homeschooling so much more legally possible, more acceptable. But it was always a very small minority of people, usually people motivated mostly by religious reasons, that were homeschooling. I had a great experience. I loved it. We played homeschool sports. We had homeschool co-ops. You know, we had our little community of homeschoolers, which was amazing. But that was my default position, was like a very unstructured, very learner-driven. I was kind of in charge. I had lots of household chores. I had jobs, like paid jobs from the time I was 10, delivering papers and working at a grocery store and a golf course and all these things. So that was all normal to me. I get to my mid-teens and I started to want to hang around my friends more often, and my siblings were out of the house more. And so I was like, I want to go to this school. There's a private school some of my friends went to. And I went to a private school for my sophomore year of high school. And it was fine, but I just remember being like, it was so foreign to me, the concept of 50-minute classes that everyone takes on the same subject at the same level because of your age, no matter how much you know, no matter how much you enjoy it. And then no matter how much you're in the zone, maybe it's a writing class and you're flowing, bell rings, got to switch. Or no matter how much you're suffering, you have to stay there until the 50-minute segment ends. And I just remember feeling like cattle. Like, even though it was a private school and it wasn't bad, I had a reasonably fun time. I like sports and the social stuff. I just thought, like, this is really dumb. Like, this is not how learning should happen. And I want to be earning money. I want to be working more. I can barely work because I'm in school all the time. I was used to working and earning money. So, like, that was my first experience of kind of, and this is an encouragement to those of you, if you raise your kids in an environment of more freedom and choice, tyranny and centralized authoritarian rule will be foreign to them. They will be foreign to their nature. They will find it offensive. Like, the idea that you have to ask permission to go to a bathroom, most people are just normalized to that. I wasn't. So I was like offended by when I had my first experience of it. So that's kind of like where I come from. I spent the rest of my career. I went to college, questioned the whole thing, thought it was a huge waste of money. College, even though there's more choice, everybody's chasing a useless piece of paper. And as you know, from my previous, episodes, our conversations, I spent most of my career in the alternative to, college alternative space. I built a program to help people skip college, do apprenticeships. I had an amazing time. But I always felt like, and then I'll shut up, Tom, and I'll let you talk again, I promise. I always felt like dealing with in Praxis, which is still going, an amazing program that helps young people get placed in jobs and they can skip college and apprentice. But one of the constraints to that company, to how big you can get it, was the people that were getting at age 18, 19, 20, the percentage of the population that is ready for an apprenticeship, that is ready and willing to go and do this, it's low because there's like a deschooling that needed to happen. Like I always would say, if there was a larger population of sort of deschooled or untainted young people, that program could grow way, way, way bigger. So like, how do we start earlier? How do we start earlier removing these mindsets that get inculcated through the standardized schooling system? And so now I'm very much focused. I'm in K through 12 space, and I'm trying to help people move out, take little steps. But wherever they are, if they want to go full on unschooling, homeschooling, great. But if they're not ready for that, and they just want to take one step in the direction of a little more customization, a little more freedom, like I want to help everybody make those moves, and more people want to than ever since COVID. So anyway, that's kind of like a big backfill.
Yeah, no, I hear it. I want to bring up something that comes up early on in the book because I want to clear this up for people. And that involves something I mentioned before, standardized testing. Now, I think for some of us, we think of standardized testing. Yeah, we know that there's the perils that they're going to teach to the test and suck all the life out of the classroom. And that is indeed what has happened. But I think a lot of us have had the response, well, but what else are you going to do? Because if you don't have standardized testing, most of the opponents of standardized testing are not like you and me. Most of the opponents are saying, well, how about if we count life experience? Or how about if we count all these things? And they're obvious excuses just to take students who aren't academically ready and push them along by giving them credit for all kinds of nonsensical, non-academic things. So we think that the response to that should be standardized testing and hard numbers. And that way we'll know everything we need to know about that kid. But it turns out that has perils also.
Yeah. So I like the analogy of, in the Soviet Union, you hear these great stories of a factory and they're given their central direction that your goal is to make the highest tonnage of nails. And so they figure out pretty quickly, if they're being judged by how much weight in nails they can produce, they just start making massive 100-pound nails because it's much easier to just make one really big, really heavy nail. And obviously, those are of no use to anybody who needs to use nails. So then eventually the central planners figure out, well, that's a bad idea. Okay, it's going to be the number of nails you produce. Then they start producing tiny little thumbtacks. And that's of no use to anybody. And it turns out markets are really complex. And they have lots of different demands for the ways that resources are used. And no one mind knows how to guess what are those demands. And so anytime you have a centralized system, any standard you apply to it is going to be imperfect and it's going to cause distortions. And so you can get in these debates where it's like, we're in a system where you're in a standardized public school and you're trying to come up with, for your state or for the nation as a whole, heaven forbid, what is the way that we should determine whether these are being effective? And when you're looking at it, when that's your mission, the premise that you need to have one standardized way that is decided by one government body, whether or not this is effective, you're always going to have that problem where you're going to warp the incentives. Everyone's going to run towards one thing, passing tests with no actual learning behind it. Or everyone's going to run away from any kind of accountability and say, just don't grade us on anything at all because we're scared of being accountable because we want to protect our jobs or whatever. You're always going to have these competing things. That's why markets work so well. So if instead you allow all of the individual goals, really it's the parents and the students. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And some may choose to opt into a setting where they're with a group of other students, and that group of other students is trying to attain a certain level of mastery within a certain time. And there may be something like standardized tests in some cases for some kids. There may be others who don't have that as a goal that's not interesting to them, or at least not in some subjects. I think that's the key is like, rather than trying to answer questions for society as a whole, for these institutions as a whole, just bring it back to you, to your children. What are my goals for them? What do I care about for them? And if you don't care about the standardized test score they get, then don't pressure them to go get it. Like, you can take that control even if the institutions don't change. And I think that's kind of the message I'm really trying to push through this book, Open Education. You don't have to wait for institutions to change. You don't have to wait for them to have a better grading system or to switch to competency-based learning, which I think is a great way to look at it. You can start doing that now with your own kids. If you don't care about that test score, say, I don't care, son. I don't care what you get on that test. Here's what I do care about, right? So like, I think that's the key message. Like, I don't want to get caught in that trap of like, what's the best grading system? What's best for your kid? That's the question.
That's true, but let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's suppose I'm an employer and I don't just want to have a fuzzy recommendation letter from Mrs. Griffin, who says, oh, Tommy was the sweetest little boy I've ever had, and I'm sure he will be good at anything he does. Like I want something that's that like a number, something that's absolute, like a number. And so how do we persuade people that maybe there's a better way of looking at somebody than through the lens of a number?
So we already do that, Tom, right? Like, we all know that grades are a pretty rough proxy. They have some signal, like any signal in the marketplace. The easier it is to game, the less valuable it is. The harder it is to fake a signal, the more valuable. So if someone applies for a job today, say they want to work for you as a marketer, I always like this example. You're probably not going to look at their resume and say, GPA, that's the first thing I'm going to zero in on, right? Like, even the resume in general, kind of easy to game and fake and make look good. You're kind of like, I'll look at it. It factors in. But what's going to factor in a lot more? How they talk to you on that interview. Whether they send you something, hey, I built this webpage.
I want to see something they've done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and it's different for different careers. There are some places where there are certain standardized things that are useful, but it's this huge complex array in the market of all these various signals. And when you're like, I've even run into people like this. Okay, I did everything right. I was an honor student. I got all the good grades. Now somebody owes me a good paying job because they have been duped into thinking that really tiny little subset of ways to measure skill or competence is everything, and that's going to communicate their value to the market. But it doesn't. In most roles, it's actually completely irrelevant. In some roles, it's a little bit relevant, but it's like, when you go to buy even a consumer product now, a rating on Amazon has some value, but we have 4.7 star syndrome. Everything has 4.7 stars because they all get gamed. Nobody wants to have it have 5 because that looks fake. So they make sure it's, looks real, but it's like, okay, I'll take it with a grain of salt. That's going to play into my decision a little bit, but most likely I want to see the product. I want to try it. I want to ask somebody I trust if they've used the product, right? You're looking for a transfer of trust. So those numerical grades, they capture something, but they're so weak. As soon as you build a better signal, they go away. Their relevance just disappears.
Hey, everybody, every year around my birthday, my kids ask what I want. And the fact is, I'm pretty content. It's hard for me to think of anything. So I usually say something lame like, I just want all you guys to be happy. And they say, Dad, that is not a present. So I'll tell you what we've decided to do. I've got a daughter who's in a culinary program, so I've relented and I actually gave her an idea of something I'd like for my birthday. What if she made me a nice dinner? And she loves that idea. Well, what do you think I want for dinner? Salad? No, as the folks at Omaha Steaks remind us, dads want steak. The Woods family's history with Omaha Steaks goes back at least to 2010. We started ordering it because it was delicious and convenient, and it meant we always had delicious steaks on hand. Every steak is perfectly aged to maximize tenderness and hand-cut by master butchers. And this is what your dad wants. Not another pair of socks or a necktie or things that are just going to clutter the house. He wants something that's going to make other dads in the neighborhood envious. And you'll love ordering from Omaha Steaks, which has been America's original butcher since 1917. And it's not just steaks. They also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, dessert, as well as easy-to-prepare comfort food. So this Father's Day, give Dad the world's best steak experience with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for guaranteed perfect gifts that deliver legendary quality. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code WOODS at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with promo code WOODS at checkout. See site for details. So let's talk now about where Open Ed is coming into this picture, because I'm really, really interested in the work you're doing. The other day, in my school life program, I had Kevin Dolan come on and talk about what he'd done for his family of 6. And they're all different. They're all different. And I grew up with no siblings. So I was under the impression that you raise children the same way, they come out the same. Not so. So they're all different. And he used AI, and he is not one of these tech people who thinks tech is going to solve all our problems, or he's always got the latest gadget. That's not him. But he used it to devise for them a curriculum that was suited to each particular person in terms of their interests, their learning style, it's, how they enjoy spending their time. And each one, it was tailored to each one. It just was spit right out. And so I wonder if you could describe for me, just invent one at random. If you had the world that Open Ed is looking to create, and we had it today, what would Jane's course of study in whatever grade look like now, as opposed to what it has looked like for years and years up to now?
So here's how it has looked for the last 200 years since the public school system was invented. And, with varying degree of change, but for the most part, it's looked the same. And frankly, most private schools follow the same template. Someone decides what all people of age 13 should know and how they should learn it. And then they impose it on all of them, right? And it's like the classic central planner's problem. If you decide to make a shoe for the entire country, and you just measure everybody's feet and take the average foot size and make a shoe for the average foot size, it's not going to fit 95% of people, right? But that's the standard approach. Here's your curriculum. Here's what you're going to learn, because we have decided to come up with some aggregated, goal for everybody your age, which is a pretty arbitrary thing in many ways. Open education, the concept is literally just to take one student at one slice in time. This fall, this semester, where am I at? Where do I want to be? What am I trying to accomplish? So you start with the goals of that individual. And then you start with the resources available to them and the abilities and aptitudes they have. Given those goals, given what I have available to me, what do I think is the best way to reach them? This is very simple, by the way. This is how we do most other things in our life. For some reason, education, we've kind of outsourced to, this is how you go about making your menu for what you're going to make for your meals for the week. Okay. What do I want to have? What do I have available to me? What do I have to go buy at the grocery store, right? What do I put together? It's really that simple. And I think your mention of AI is actually a great example. There are more tools and resources available than ever to make this possible. This wasn't the case before. It's been the case for a while, but people didn't see it until COVID, really. When 2020 hit, you had a couple things happen at once, and that's created this massive shift. There's something like 1.5 million to 2 million people have disenrolled from public schools in the last 5 years, and homeschooling has grown from 3.5 to 5 million. It's probably way more than that. Those are official numbers. A lot of homeschoolers are unofficial. So this has happened for a reason. That's why I said it's a quiet revolution. People don't realize how much is happening, not to mention hybrid, virtual school, micro schools, all these other categories. But what happened in COVID, you had two things. One, parents saw, hey, my kid didn't go to school for a couple months and nothing bad happened. They're actually okay. They went back to school and they weren't like really dramatically behind, like, oh, that's weird. Kind of like they don't really need to be there at all hours every single day, 5 days a week. Interesting. So that was like point one. The other one was, to the extent that they were doing some kind of virtual version of school, parents saw what was actually being taught, what was actually happening, and they were not impressed. They were like, that's it? I don't think that's that good. All this time, I felt like there's no way I could ever help create my kid's education. I got to outsource it to a really smart expert, to a teacher, to a school. Then they saw what they were giving them, and they were like, this isn't that good. I think I could do this myself, and I think I could have schedule flexibility. Parents are now working from home. What if my kid just did school at home? What if they just had a little bit of help? Or maybe they did a couple online classes. Maybe we went to a co-op once a week. People saw what was possible. Mises talks about 3 preconditions to human action. You have to have dissatisfaction with the status quo, a vision of something better, and a belief in your ability to get there. Everybody's had some level of dissatisfaction with the public school status quo. I think that ratcheted up with COVID, but I also think people saw a vision of something better when they saw kids, and a lot of parents would tell me this, my kids were home and I actually kind of loved it. And I kind of felt sad sending them back. And I kind of didn't want to, right? And they're starting to, do I have to? They're starting to question, maybe it is possible. There is a vision of something better. Maybe I can do something more customized. You add to it AI, you add to it all the ability to go take one class on Khan Academy. If you're a parent, you feel comfortable teaching your kid a lot of stuff, but you don't feel comfortable teaching them math, then go take a free math class on Khan Academy or one of these sites, or find a teacher on OutSchool. That was not possible before. So now people are realizing it's way more accessible to take each kid each year or semester and say, what do they need right now? And what can I customize for them? How can I craft it? The answer may be this year they want a traditional school experience. That's fine, but at least they're going there because you feel like that's what's best for them, not just because that's the default setting.
I am guessing that one of the areas of resistance you're going to run up against is that education and the way we convey knowledge to young people is very much ingrained in people's habits, and it's also tied up in people's perceived levels of status. That parents who do this or that traditional channel for their kids are of higher status than parents who maybe buck the trend, and everybody wants to impress their neighbors and have the smart kid who's following the traditional rules. And you're suggesting that traditional rules are not actually producing the kind of well-rounded people we want to see, and that we're not helping the people themselves to flower properly. So I think you have to overcome years and decades and generations of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, programming about if people want to live up to social expectations, and you are setting a match to those expectations.
That, Tom, is by far, in my experience, the biggest challenge. And when it comes to improving kids' educations, improving their outcomes, improving their experience, it's not lack of resources, lack of funding, lack of ability on the parent side to do something more customized. Those can all be challenges, but the number one hurdle is parents' ego. It's the social status component. My favorite chapter in the book, chapter 6, is called Put Your Kids Before Your Reputation. And you really have to, and this is true of all kinds of parenting, not just when it comes to education, but there is a kind of dying to yourself. You have to be willing to let other people think ill of you if you're doing what you know is best for your kids. You have to be willing to let other people think that you're weird or a loser or not as high status as they are if that's what's right for your kid. That is the single biggest hurdle. I'll tell you a story about this. When I was running Praxis, and this is when it really clicked for me. Like, oh, the hurdle, the thing that keeps people going to college, it's not because it's getting them amazing jobs, because it's not. They're all unemployed. They go for 6 years and then they can't get a job for 2 years and then they work as a barista. Like, it's not giving them this ticket to a job. They claim that's why they're going. They claim they have to get a job. That's not actually the case for most. So why do they keep going? I was talking with this mother. Her son had applied for the program. I think he was 19 or 20. Or maybe he was only 18 or 19. He was pretty young. But she said, yeah, I'm just really worried about him. I really want him to go to college. I said, well, tell me more about it. She said, well, in high school, he didn't really pay that much attention to class and whatever. He was always having these businesses. He had this lawn business on the side, and he was learning how to do web development. He was trying to build web pages for people. He finally graduated, and he didn't want to go to college. So for the last year, he's been running this business. He made like $60,000 that year running a business as an 18-year-old marketing business. He had stopped doing his lawn business. He had learned from that, whatever. He's crushing it. He's happy. He's living in an apartment by himself. And he's like loving life. Because I knew from talking to him when he applied to the program. She said, I'm just worried. I wish he would go to college. And she said, I wish he was more like his sister. And I said, well, tell me about his sister. She said, well, she just moved in back at home because she hasn't been able to find a job for the last 6 months. But she was always an honor student. She got a scholarship. She went to school. She got her degree and graduated. So proud of her. She's been pretty depressed because she broke up with her boyfriend and she can't find a job. So she doesn't know what to do. But, I'm really proud. And I'm thinking, okay, your daughter who went into debt for 4 years, couldn't get a job, moved back at home, is unemployed and depressed and in debt. She is the one you're holding up as the paragon. This is what I wish my son would be like. Meanwhile, your son has no debt, is living on his own independently, made 60 grand as an 18-year-old running his own business, and is loving life. What's the difference? When she goes to the cocktail party, the neighborhood barbecue, and somebody says, how's Jimmy? Is he going to college? She has to say, no, he's doing a little business. Whatever she says other than that, people automatically think, oh, he didn't get into college. He must be struggling. They think he's a loser.
Yeah, he's a loser. Yeah.
They think, right. And like the mother, even if she knows that's not true, she has to suffer other people thinking that she failed because her son's a loser. The daughter, on the other hand, how's she doing? She graduated with honors. Oh, I'm so proud of her.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that she's depressed, has no prospects, is moving back. And that's what it comes down to. Those shortcuts, the social shortcuts for a parent. Oh, how's your kid doing? If you can just say the thing that everyone wants to hear, they got a good grade. They just got the report card. They got into AP English. No matter how depressed and messed up they are, people will act like you're a good parent and you get to feel good. And the converse is also true. So that to me is the part that you have to overcome. That is the biggest hurdle. Parents letting go of the approval of others. Often it's just perfect strangers. Why do you care about their approval? Do what's good for your kid.
Hey folks, Old Woods here, and I am never going to be out of a job because there is so much propaganda to overturn, and that includes when it comes to your retirement. We've been brainwashed into thinking the only way to grow our money for retirement is to risk it in the stock market. Not true. You can reach your financial goals and dreams without taking any unnecessary risks. Bank on Yourself is the proven retirement plan alternative that lets you bypass Wall Street, beat the banks at their own game, and take control of your financial future. Guaranteed predictable growth and retirement income with no luck, skill, or guesswork required. Your plan doesn't go backward when the markets tumble. Both your principal and growth are locked in. You got tax-free retirement income. You'll know what your tax rate will be in retirement. 0 under current tax law, which protects you from the coming tax tsunami. And you're in control. You get access to your money for any purpose with no questions asked and no government penalties or restrictions on how much income you can take or when you can take it. You can't do that with a 401k or IRA. You can get a free report with all the details on how the Bank on Yourself strategy adds guarantees, predictability, and control to your financial plan. Just go to bankonyourself.com/woods. That's bankonyourself.com/woods. Yeah, I know. And I mean, we hear that, do what's good for your kid. It seems easy, but I understand the pressure of people want to keep up appearances, and they think that one such appearance is, look, so-and-so is going to Harvard. And look, I mean, there's no getting around it. There's prestige associated with that, although I think less now, less than there was 10 years ago. That's for sure. There's less of that. And I'll tell you something, by the way. Now, I realize I'm not the average person. If you would choose the average person, they would say something else. But if I hear that a kid is a freshman at Harvard, my thought now is that kid has there isn't one opinion that kid holds that would surprise me. Which is why if I were still doing alumni interviews, which I used to do, my question to the students would be, name me one opinion of yours that would surprise me. That's not...
They fit on a 3x5 card, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think to myself, these people want to go along to get along. They will adopt the reigning ideas because they think that'll help them get ahead. And so if I am looking for somebody I think will be genuine with me, and I don't have to walk on eggshells around, and who genuinely wants to break the mold, the last person on earth I would look to is a Harvard freshman.
Yeah. It's the conformity component. That's the unwritten curriculum, right? So when you think about what happens, like how does learning actually happen? And this is important for us to remember as parents. We have sort of been taught, and again, this is a new thing. This is like the last 200 years of all of human existence. I mean, I'm only slightly exaggerating. We have come to believe that learning is this thing that happens when you sit down to learn. And that usually means sit down and listen to someone tell you facts. And those facts go into your brain and now you know things, right? That's not how 98% of learning happens. Learning happens, the environment you're in, the things that you see, and the things that are rewarded and the things that are punished. The incentive structure. You have a often subconscious, sometimes it's conscious, process of learning. You observe, oh, when people do that, other people smile at them. Oh, when I do this, something good happens. When I do this, I don't get what I want. This is how learning happens all the time. And so what does that mean for school? The explicit curriculum is memorize these facts about history and these, and everybody debates those and gets really mad because the curriculum becomes, too politically left or too politically right, or they're mad about the curriculum. It's now they're teaching math in a stupid way. And those are all worthy things to discuss. But that's only like a very small percent of what kids are actually learning. What they're learning, they're being conditioned to certain behaviors, certain reward and punishment structures that are often not explicit, not like physically punished, like maybe back in the day, but socially, the reward, the teacher's smiling at you, making you feel good, making you feel bad. And what it is conditioned to conformity, obedience, being exactly the same as everybody else your age, no privacy. Bathroom doors are like not even existent in a lot of these schools because they're scared that kids are going to, smoke in there or something. Like this ever-present surveillance experience, like it's kind of prison-like in many ways. You're being conditioned to that. And you're being taught. Kids like to look up to things and they watch. And you see this with young kids before they go to school. They watch mom and dad and they do what you do. They emulate you. They look up to you and they learn what they're around. This is why apprenticeships are so great. You learn when you're around people doing the thing you want to do. And then you start to do it yourself. You don't just read about it in books from someone who's never done it. So when you think of the apprenticeship angle, school is really an apprenticeship to be a public school teacher. That's the only profession you're around is teachers. So you learn what teachers do. And if you want to be a teacher, that's a great apprenticeship. You see what a public school teacher does. For everybody else, they're not learning any skill. Like most jobs do not look like public school teachers. So it'd be like if I said, hey, I've got a kid who has no interest in anything related to blacksmithing, and I'm going to send him to a blacksmith for 15 years of their life, 10 years of their life. They're going to just go there every day and apprentice the blacksmith, even though they have no aptitude and no interest. You'd say that's crazy. That's kind of what you do when you're in school all day. You're apprenticing to teachers to learn what it is to be a teacher, but you're not around any other kind of careers. So you have these hidden curricula that train you in things subconsciously that are not really serving you most of the time.
So how do parents go about what you're trying to support them in doing? Like, how do they begin to assess what their kids should do? I mean, I know that there's quote unquote unschooling, which kind of implies that the children direct the whole thing. But you're not advocating any one particular approach. You're just advocating a flexible approach, as long as it's not one size fits all. But where do you start? Do you assess their interests? Do you assess their learning styles? Where do you even begin to devise what you're proposing that you can devise for them?
Yeah, and that's actually what gets me really excited about this new company I'm running, Open Ed, and then the book, which is just about the concept, open education. it's a lot bigger than just, say, homeschooling or unschooling or any particular approach. Classical education, it includes those things, but it's bigger than those things. And I came to this through my own experience with my own kids. We started out with a very rigorous curriculum with my oldest. That was not working at all. He's very imaginative, free spirit kind of guy, very philosophical. So then we switched to basically unschooling. And there's a lot to recommend itself about unschooling, but that also was not quite the right fit for him, especially at certain ages. When he was really young, yes, as he got a little older, he needed more structure. He needed more responsibility, more things that we were kind of helping him along with. And so we learned that. We've done micro schools, hybrid schools. He wanted to go to a public school for high school. We said, sure, go ahead. He went for 1 year, didn't want to go back. So he didn't go back. And we've learned with all 4 of our kids, that really what matters to me is not so much any one particular modality or approach to education, but parents feeling like every option is on the table, which it really is. So kid by kid, and we have some pretty cool like exercises and stuff in this book you can go through if you really want to get into the weeds of like, all right, here's my kid, here's what they're interested in. Some fun stuff you can do with sticky notes and just kind of like assessing. We have some free stuff you can get, worksheets and stuff, but assessing each kid at a time. And each year, like in summer is a great time to do this. All right, kids get into their teens, they start to really want to be around other kids a lot more. And so a traditional homeschool setting, you might want to say, well, now I want them to go to a 3-day-a-week micro school, or I want to form some kind of co-op, or maybe they want to go to a private school or a public school. Or here's what's crazy. You can take little steps at a time. So I talk to a lot of parents who are like, my kids are in public school. I'm a single parent. I have to work. I can't afford private school and they need to be somewhere. I can't homeschool them. What you can do, you'd be amazed. Even if you're in that setting, you can just say, oh, for this class, I think the homework is a waste. We're not going to do homework for that class. Or we're going on a trip for a month and they're just not going to go to school for a month. People think that they actually can't do that and that they're not allowed to do that. You actually can. The school can't do anything. Like they can't do anything to you. You can just go and tell them this. They may not even know that themselves. Teachers and stuff, they may say, you can't do that, but you can. And it's amazing to see people when they realize, even just on the margins, like, is there one part of my kid's education experience where I just see them suffering and it's not serving them? If I can just say, let me just remove that one thing. Let me just replace it with something different. Is there something that really makes them come alive? Let me double down on that. Like, just starting small. So if you want to go through the whole exercise, you can. There's a lot of great stuff. opened.co/book you can get for free. But I would just say start with the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit. Start with if you have one child who one thing is just really, really not serving them well and you just know it. Just start by removing that one thing. If it's a class or if it's a type of homework or if it's a subject. And if there's one thing that they really love, ask yourself, can I help them do a little bit more of that just on the margin? And then you'll start to open up your mind to the possibilities. And then the floodgates will eventually open and you'll be able to really customize things for each of your kids. It's a progression. It's usually a gradual progression.
Now, you said at the beginning that when you were with Praxis, one of the issues you had was you didn't have people who were like ready, like in the head, ready to take on an opportunity like Praxis because they'd gone through 12 years plus kindergarten of a very regimented kind of approach to education and just doing things by the book. So they're just not in the headspace for what you were offering them. But you do have in this book a little bit of material on, indeed, in your vision, what the post-high school world could look like for people who might be inclined to break the mold. So maybe you could share a little bit of that.
Yeah, and that's always the part, this is one of my original inspirations for Praxis because what do I do after graduation is always the justification people give for, okay, like I know my kid's not loving their school at K through 12 experience. I know they might not be learning a lot, but they have to do it because they have to get in a good college. And then you're like, well, why do they have to get in a good college? Because they have to go into college to get a good job. And you realize, oh, all these other things, those are like downstream of this belief that you need a good job, and to get that, you need college. And that's why you go through. And once you can like start removing those assumptions one at a time, blowing them up, again, everything opens up. So this notion that you need a degree for a quote good job, there are very few jobs where you actually need a degree. Like where it's legally required, yes, you can't practice as a lawyer or accountant in most places without a degree. Anything with government licensure usually has a degree requirement. Medicine. There are very few of the percentage of careers that fit that is very small. And if you really, really know that's what you want, now you know why you're going to college, because you have to get the thing that you actually want. And then, of course, make that experience as great as you want to. But for the rest, when you look at what am I trying to accomplish? And you don't necessarily have to know a specific job, but when you think about, maybe you have a general industry or a general area of interest. What is it that is valued by people there? And you start to ask that and work backwards. Okay, what do I not have that I need to have to get that? Very rarely is the 4-year college experience the best path to get there. Certainly when you calculate the ROI, given the cost, it's almost never the path. So then you can look at what else is available. Apprenticeships, internships, literally just shadowing people for free. It's incredible. Starting a business. I tell young people this all the time. If you start a business and run it and it makes no money and it doesn't succeed, you're going to learn more trying that than almost anything else you can do. Try that 3 or 4 times. Not because it's going to make you a millionaire, but because the education you get just from the process. So there's plenty of, alternatives outside of college. And then there's an increasing number of college or college-like institutions that are trying to do things differently as well. There are programs that are, competency-based, which I think makes way more sense. Sort of a mastered or not yet approach. Have you mastered this thing? If not, go back to the drawing board until you have. And you take the test or do the assessment or the oral exam or whatever it is as many times as you need to until you have mastered it. That's how we treat things in the rest of the world. Have you mastered riding a bike? Yes or no? No, I haven't. Then keep trying until you have. It's not you got 50%, you're done, and now you're going to go do a different subject, right? It's no, if I care about it, I'm going to keep coming back to it. So there are more alternatives there, lots and lots of programs coming out for a different approach, whether it's liberal arts or something very career-oriented. And I think, again, starting with the goal, starting with the assessment of what you want and what you have available to you, it makes everything so much easier because it's focused on you rather than this sort of societal assumption about what's next on my conveyor belt.
Well, everybody, the book is Open Education, How to Reimagine Learning, Ignite Curiosity, and Prepare Your Kids for Success, co-authored by the great Isaac Morehouse himself, who has devoted his life to innovating in this area, in one part of education or another, as well as in careers and helping people get on the right track there. I mean, he's done more than you could possibly expect one guy to do. So I really do hope you'll check out that book. I'm, of course, going to have it linked at tomwoods.com/2653, as well as in the description of the video. So again, Open Education by Matt Bowman and Isaac Morehouse. I hope it does great for you. I hope Open Ed is a smashing success. It is the right thing at the right time.
Thanks, Tom. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Isaac, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.